climate change. They say I'm not gonna do it because it's so expensive, and I love my dollar bills. Well, that's sort of what happens. And the next thing you know, they're gonna tell you, well, at least it's better than yours, America, or something like that. That's how many YouTubers actually explain all of this climate change too. And I'm just gonna take off the dollar bill glasses because it's making me dizzy. But first of all, what I want to say right now about climate change is the fact that it's actually happening. It's real. Some people say it's not happening. Everyone's lying, especially the UN. Like, all those people seem to be going on about like that because they believe that climate change is just the natural order of the earth. Climate change so many times. So if you're saying climate change is so serious, then ask the past. Yeah, something like that seems to happen every day. Hang on a second, how do we cool the earth? We need water, but it's made of water, so how are we gonna cool it? As they say, fight fire with fire. You mean put more gas in the air? Yes. Wait, what? No. Well, there goes the end of that. Any ideas? Nope. Good. Alright, let's actually talk about climate change this time, buddies. First of all, let's start with the global issue. Climate change. Global issue number 6. Well, I say that's just a lot of great things that happen on the earth. We just made cars. We just made fossil fuels that burn more efficiently. Well, lots of people say those are terrible ideas. If fossil fuel burns more efficiently, that means gas will go into the atmosphere more, and climate change will go on into its final phase of its plan more faster. Because we are the reasons climate change is happening like this. Well, sure, climate change has happened over the past few years, and even the past few millennia too. It changed so many times. Like the fact that the magnetic poles of the Earth and the Earth have switched so many times. However, one thing has been clear to me is that climate changes with it. Because of the magnetic poles, it's the reason why weather is weird. It's also the reason why weather suddenly turns upside down. Weather turns suddenly into lightning. And all those weirdos things that you can imagine happens. The thing is, global warming is a terrible thing. It melts ice caps, which means more sea level, and that means destruction of cities, like Chicago. And like books have said, we're planning on destroying Chicago, and I wish you guys would move away in 59 minutes and 52.5 milliseconds. And no one gets the point because they never are able to destroy Chicago because no one knows that these little teenagers just outwitted the people who will destroy Chicago. It's just not the most factious person of all. If you want to be a suicidal type, then maybe just go ahead and take away your soul and say, I am not worth it, so I'll suicide myself forever, even if it costs my life, which of course it would cost your life. The second thing I have to really mention right now is the fact that culture has a good way of bringing themselves back up into their earth. However, the ways of life aren't that good at bringing themselves up from the ruins of an earth, especially culture too. Ways of life and culture are things that are built over generations. And suddenly natural disasters happen because of global warming and like climate change, then that will mean, well, everything will become one of the greatest mishaps of the whole world that nature just created. Because if I know anything about mishaps, is that when they happen fast, and when they happen, their effects happen fast too. The next thing I really want to mention right now is that what would happen if global warming keeps on continuing? It would destroy fisheries, coral reefs, especially in the Australian peninsula. It would create tsunamis. It would create natural disasters beyond imagination. If you ever read the 39 Clues Series 2, Chaos vs. Vespers, you might know what I mean if climate change keeps on going. Sure, in the books they have like light purple lightning going from the top, like going upside down the sky with those like clouds coming like accelerating, and that looks like those weather maps, those like icons and pictures on the weather maps, the animated ones. And that's just not half of it too. In fact, why is all this happening anyway? I'm not sure. I'm not saying that purple lightning will come from down to up. Again, I'm not saying that. What I'm mentioning right now is that the CO2, methane, and all these other gases are let out just to do all this, just to havoc, disaster, and all this. Because there's one thing I know, it's that disaster is something nature did. Lots of people actually try to make explanations for disasters. Some said, it's the gods angry on us! Others say, there's no disaster. They're just going for negative and saying, there's no disaster. Others go ahead and say, we did something wrong, but God is punishing us. God. It's not the gods, the God. The God. It just doesn't seem right, too. Because if there's one thing I learned about religion, is that, well, God might exist. If you look at the Big Bang, who created what? Or who created the Big Bang? So God might exist. Well, I actually am very skeptical about God still existing, but he did exist. Probably once. There's proof of it. At least evidence where there's a blank hole that God could probably fill up. But that's all I got to say right now about the Big Bang. I'll talk about that in another episode. The second thing I really want to talk about climate change is that we have to fix it, and here are 3 case studies that will probably convince you to fix it. Case study number 1. Here, we land in Australia, where the people are, well, this is a stereotype, where the people are known to say, mate. That's a stereotype, by the way, so don't actually believe everyone in Australian says that. Back to the point. Record drought ended in 2010 because during that time, until then, the southeastern part of Australia was particularly very, very dry with cracks in the cornerstones and everything. The thing is, in 2011 in Australia, the northeastern Australian part actually experienced rain, storms, and I'm not sure if this is a benefit because, well, a flood happened, but I'm not really sure that's actually a benefit or like a consequence too, because it's been dry for almost for a long time, so some wet rains should do well. But if there's a little too much rain and too much water, then is that a bad thing? Because it's been dry for so long that I don't really know. And now for the second case study. Antarctica! Wait, I need warm clothes. Hang on a second. There we go. We know all the things that Australia is experiencing. In fact, Australia has been experiencing them for a little bit more than I guess I should mention this myself. Australia is known for its ice. We all know that because it's ice everywhere. Also, we probably don't know, lots of people don't know that Australia is a desert. But I have to admit it myself, I didn't really know that because deserts are supposed to be hot and dry. Well, it turns out the definition of a desert is actually just a place that's dry with almost no rain, and Australia has very low rain, so I guess that makes sense why it's be a cold desert. At least they have water in the form of ice. And speaking of water turning into ice, all that death ray UV radiation heat of the sun literally did a fantastic job at melting the whole thing, and the water expands into the ice, which cracks it, and which turns it all into broken pieces of ice floating on a wall, or at least a ground full of water. And then I'm pretty sure the next thing I know is that the glaciers will be gone, the animals, the penguins will all be gone too. It's just glacial ice melting disasters going on right there, and if we don't control this soon enough, lots of cities will be gone. And the city that I'm in right now will be gone if this happens. And I do not want that to happen. Possibly the whole of South Korea and North Korea will be gone too. Or at least, if it doesn't, parts of it will. And the final case study I have to tell you guys is the Pacific Realm. No, I'm not talking about the movie where there are robots fighting monsters. I'm talking about weather patterns. Let me explain this with camera view. Well, here's the thing. Altered weather patterns are one thing, but if it's altered enough, then tsunamis will happen and lots of things will be lost. In fact, in the Pacific Realm, it's the largest ocean ever. So, if that floods and if that climate change changes, then lots of things will happen. One thing that will probably happen is that we'll lose many banks, many docks, many fisheries, many coral reefs, especially the Australian part of that, and all the livelihoods and cultures and ways of life of lots of people who live in the Pacific Ocean, or mainly the islands that are on the Pacific Oceans, will all probably be destroyed, and they'll probably never be able to live and redo their whole cycles on a different people too. That might never happen. The second thing I really want to mention in this is that global warming is a terrible thing. In fact, nature has done it several times, but this time is different. It's more extreme. But the next thing I really want to say right now is how we can take action to fix all this. Now, mainly one of the gases that go into the atmosphere and build up all that. Let me show you guys this. Let's say this blue ball with green spots is the Earth, and the white spots. Wait, white doesn't show well, so I'll use yellow spots. No, I'm gonna use that for the sunlight. Violet spots are the atmosphere. And let's say this big, well, to us it's small, but this yellow ball is the sun, and these are the rays. Sometimes they're deflected, but usually, sometimes they're deflected right here. Usually, this is what happens, and it's trapping all the heat, and for that, it's warming up the Earth and killing it. And that's how our big blue ball is acting right now. The second thing I really want to mention, another thing that we do, is lots of people are actually taking action. If you remember Mr. Beast, he did a hashtag Clean Trees and a hashtag Clean Seas, or you donate $1 for every pound of trash to be taken out of the sea, or donate $1 to, plant a tree. Trees are great because it takes in CO2 and turns it into O2, which is what we breathe. Also, not in the pure form. We can't breathe the pure O2 form, though. And another thing you can do is go ahead and plant trees yourself. Another thing you can do is make videos and actually do these other things I told you to spread awareness and to do action at the same time. You can lessen your carbon footprint, and you can make presentations to show to the community. You can get your town leaders to convince the government to be able to do a climate reform first. And you can recycle too. The 3 R's: recycle, reuse, reduce. Do it especially on the reducing part. That's all I have to say. One more thing before I go. Natural disasters and climate change are still affecting us today. Australia, there have been fires, but the most recent one, which happened 2 days ago when I'm recording this, which is on August 12th, on 2 days ago, August 10th, Hawaii caught on fire. And currently, from all the things that I just currently researched, this is fairly new. It's less than 72 hours old. 80 people have, at least 80 people have died, burned. Hospitals are overrun, and the island, fires would have probably been just from a forest. They were hoping it would be from a forest, but then a carrier for a hurricane came in and gave it fuel, which is probably the reason why it's still running today. In fact, as I speak right now, the fires on Hawaii are still happening. And lots of people are trying to figure out how to get them off. That's why nature is so scary. People who try to control nature probably just make it into a disaster. And people who succeed in controlling nature will probably be blackmailers of blackmailing people to rule the world. But that's all I'm going to say right now. I hope you guys actually enjoyed this episode of Hanjin John. And I actually hope you guys, whoever you're watching, whether you're young, will be able to watch this and get inspired and make a whole new generation for the future. So I hope to see you guys next time in another episode, and possibly an episode on a day when climate change is, well, not as severe as right now. I'll see you guys soon. Shannon out. Peace.